Hello there. Yesterday, Free League did another one. They released their Dragonbane RPG on Kickstarter, and originally this is a remake essentially of Drakar och Demona, a Swedish role-playing game from the 1980s, which has been hugely influential on the whole Swedish Scandinavian role-playing scene. And of course, yeah, when they first announced it, they said, "Oh, it's going to be Swedish only. Sorry, mates." And yeah, I certainly quietly acquiesced and thought, yeah, I could have a look, but it's probably more work than it's worth it. And well, then they said, actually, you know what? We changed our minds. We're going to do this in English as well. So yesterday it kickstarted. It launched on Kickstarter, and of course, yeah, I had a look, and as usual, I couldn't resist. So this is a first look. I've read through the rules once, and it's me trying to summarize. I'm going to use this Kickstarter, which is available on the Kickstarter site for free, to just talk through what I think the rules are going to be. And to sum up, it sounds like an enticing mix of a little bit of Symbaroum, a little bit of Forbidden Lands, a little bit of D&D, the old style D&D. And I think it actually strikes an interesting balance between all of those. It's in some cases it's easier, some cases it's more complicated, but I think it's going to be more playable than Forbidden Lands, which I love. Yeah, if you know my streams, I've got lots of streams of Forbidden Lands for these days. Looking through this book, I mean, how can you not fall in love with that? This is the artist by Johan Egerkrans again, and just that, the very, very first picture, I just thought, you know, that really reminds me of an old game I used to play, and I was immediately hooked into that. It talks a little bit about the background to it. As I said, it's from the 1980s. I'm not sure how much they have changed. I don't know how much they might have added or tweaked, but it's a more modern take on it, I believe. So player characters kin, yeah, I'm going to zoom on some of the things that I think might be of interest to you. But if you have questions, then please ask. So there will be human, halfling, dwarf, elf, mallard, which is essentially duck. Think Howard the Duck, or wolfkin. Yeah, so 6 kins. Some of them have professions, and so you've got kin talents and profession talents, which other kins and professions cannot have. You then have your normal attributes here, ranging between 3 and 18, the higher the better. So strength, constitution, agility, intelligence, willpower, and charisma. And if you ever test on your attribute, you take a d20, you roll match or under. Yeah, so you will have the full set of dice here, including a d4, which not all of the, and d20, which Forbidden Lands doesn't have. You've got a few pools of things, derive ratings. There's movement, which means that it's going to be grid-based, not zone-based. There's going to be damage bonus for strength weapons and agility weapons. You have hit points and you have willpower points. And willpower points, you start, just like hit points, with a full complement, and then you use them, lose them, and regenerate them. You have a set of skills. I'm going to show you the character sheets in a moment. Motivations, of course, always motivations these days. You have gear as ever. The encumbrance is managed like Forbidden Lands. So there are slots in your inventory, and those slots basically will tell you how much you can carry, how many items you can carry. You know this from Alien, for example, as well. So if it's a heavy item, it takes more than 1 slot. Tiny don't take any. But I haven't seen any light items taking half. Yeah, that seems to be out. Weapons that you're at hand, that are equipped essentially, don't count. Armor doesn't count. That's also interesting. They've got different time scales. They've got this sort of the round, the stretch, yeah, 15 minutes, and the shift, 6 hours, quarter day. So yeah, that's your time, how the times work. You roll a die, d20, well, whatever you test, whether it's a skill or an attribute, is always d20. It's not split between them. A 1 is what they call a dragon. Yeah, couldn't get better. So critical success, if you want to call it that. Or if you roll a 20, couldn't get worse. That's what they call a demon. Yeah, so rolling a demon. You can also have advantages and disadvantages. With the second d20, you take the more favorable one or unfavorable one. They call that boons and banes. It's not quite the same use of language as in Symbaroum, for example. Yeah, other than that, it's very much roll as little as you need to. Yeah, you don't roll, you don't go crazy. That's the same thing with other Free League games. You roll if it actually matters. If there's a risky, interesting outcome, then you do it. You have the 6 attributes, and those 6 attributes essentially give you your opportunity. These green boxes here, they are optional rules, so this is an optional rule, to push. So when you push a skill, then you can basically mark one of your attributes, one of the 6, and that gives you a condition. You might be dazed, mark your strength for that. And subsequently, any strength test you take, you are rolling at a disadvantage or with a bane, to stay in the use of language of the game. And until you, basically when you've got them all ticked, you're still not really broken as such, but you can't push anymore, and you're definitely going to be disadvantaged rolling everything with a bane. You can assist each other. This is very, very easily done. You basically gain an advantage. They must declare it, they must spend their action in a fight to help you, and they suffer the consequences if you fail. So that's very much like we know. Rounds and initiative will be working 1 to 10, with cards usually, although dice rolling doesn't really matter, but cards are good because you don't get doubles. Fast NPCs, fast monsters, can have more than 1. Again, we know that from Forbidden Lands and Aliens, etc. And the lower, the better. So the 1 goes first. Not that it really matters, as long as you're being consistent. So in a fight, you have an action and you have a move. So you can move up to your movement limit in meters, and then you can take an action. The actions are listed here. You can read it up yourself. Probably not going to be big enough on the screen, but this gives you the idea of what it is. An attack, for example, or a dash, which means you take your action and use it for movement. A dodge, a parry. So if you are attacked and you can react, you're still spending your action. So if you decide to block somebody's blow, you can't attack that round anymore. Yeah? It's not a fast action, slow action sort of economy anymore. It just means if you block, if you go defensive in that round, you can't attack anymore. Done. Movement I discussed already. Very much, oh look at that art, very much a grid-based approach as far as I can tell. And what I like is drawing weapons, readying a weapon as a free action, so is getting up from the floor, because whenever you dodge, you're going to be prone afterwards. Which means you're more vulnerable to further attacks, but you can get up and bounce up and still attack the next round. So the penalty of going prone after dodge is definitely lower. What else can I tell you here? On the melee combat, it's very much like you would expect it to be. On a critical hit, so that's when you have a 20 roll, a dragon, you can basically choose double damage, armor piercing, or free attack on somebody else. Definitely some minor detail here on shield, for example. If you block with a weapon, and that's fine, it takes the hit, or you parry with a weapon. But if the damage it parries is higher than the weapon's durability, then it's damaged, and anything further you try to do with it is going to have a bane. So it's a very, very neat way of just saying advantage, disadvantage. Not other modifiers. There's no other modifiers on here. And at the same time, they avoid this thing of your weapon is broken, you can't attack with it. So I quite like that. Ranged combat works very much the same. Armor is flat, so you don't roll for armor. Your armor has a rating. That gets deducted from any damage you take. You don't have to roll for that. Makes the fight a bit faster there. There's death rolling. So if you are at 0 or fewer HP, you do death saves. Very much feels like D&D again. And conditions, we discussed them already, they heal at some certain intervals. So you can have a stretch rest. Most people would call it a short rest. I'm sure the stretch rest will not really make itself take a big place in the vocab of players. I don't think so. It's not a good word. But yeah, you in a short rest up to 50 minutes, it's D6 hit points or 2D6 hit points if somebody looks after you, and with a healing roll. So that's good. You can actually heal before you're broken. You can rest longer as well. Sorry, in the short rest, you also get 2d6 willpower point back. So willpower comes back relatively quickly. It's almost like the corruption in Symbaroum. Yeah? Take a rest, end of scene, you can cast again. Also pause some abilities, so keep that in mind. Shift rest, so that's 6 hours, a shift rest, a quarter day rest. You will recover everything. Stretch rest, did I say? You can recover 1 condition. And yeah, with magic you can of course heal more. Fear and poison, yeah, the rules are slightly I think they're slightly clearer than they are in Forbidden Lands, so that's good. Because the disease and poison rules I always find very awkward. Monsters. Yeah, you cannot normally parry or block monster attacks, it says here. We know that from Forbidden Lands, but you can always dodge them. Or almost always. It says unless it's something that tells you that you cannot. So that's not very exciting there. Now, magics are organized into schools. In this here, we have exactly one. They're powered by willpower points. There's some equivalent to cantrips. They're called tricks, small little tricks, magic tricks. And then you've got proper spells. And the spell, a cantrip costs you 1 willpower point. A spell costs you 2 per power level. And of course, it says here, if you carry iron with you, you can't use magic unless it's only a tiny item. So there's sort of sword-wielding caster in an armor like you can do in Forbidden Lands doesn't really work here very well. Yeah, so some of the spells, this is only a small set, of course, are things like Fireball, Gust of Wind, a pillar, which is sounds very interesting. You can create a 3-meter high pillar in front of you. And I guess you can block somebody's movement with it. You can keep the ceiling from coming in, but it also says you could potentially squish people. Or you can sort of elevate them, and then they have to see whether they can balance on top, or they suffer some falling damage. The rest of this is basically the scenario, and I just streamed making a map for this on Dungeon Alchemist. Don't want to really spoil this for anybody else. But it might be worth just having a look at a couple of these character sheets. It gives you a better feel. We've got the Egakron's art again. Look at that. You could actually lift that and put this straight into base. That's good. It's definitely good. For me, anyway. I love this art. And here's a character sheet. Let me zoom in a bit more. So the picture doesn't actually go. That goes with the character sheet beforehand. So we have an elf here, a little elf, a hunter. We have a motivation. We have a bit of appearance. Role-playing fluff. The name, we've got the attributes, remember, from 3 to 18. Character generation rules are not in here. So whether there's roll 3d6 and that makes up your attributes, whether that's the approach or whether it's a point buy, I don't know. I guess they might offer both. You've got damage bonus for strength attacks, directly derived from your strength. For agility attacks, directly from agility. You've got movement rate, which is, I think, your agility derived somehow. And you've got abilities and spells, which I explained on the next sheet. You've got your skills down the middle. That's your lot. You can see that they're aligned with attributes. So if you, for example, know that you've got you're dazed, then everything with strength behind it will be suffering pain. I don't think, as far as I can tell, that there's anything like you've got a strength of 13 and you've got a strength skill of blunt weapon of 6, therefore you roll against a 19. It's not like a dice pool system, it's a d20 system. So I think, best I can tell, you roll against this 6 here. So this person, this elf, is good with knives and with bows. Yeah, then you've got the armor at the bottom. Sorry, I just jumped pages here. Got the armor, the hit points. The armor here, as you can see, flat rating. It's not a die. So, quite interesting. Maybe you should just look at the second half, or actually the first half of the character sheet. So, it doesn't have any willpower points, or doesn't cost any, to use Inner Peace. Inner Peace is healing, just like in Forbidden Lands. You also have Animal Kinship, but for this one you will need to spend willpower points. So the skills that you need for your character are explained on the second page of your character sheet, or the first page, the one with the art on. You can, of course, also play one of these, a mallard, or drakling, or whatever they're called. Or to most other people, Howard the Duck. I know that, I think they were called Andrex. They were also in Symbaroum, and of course you can play something like this in RuneQuest. Some people hate it, some people think it's fun. Why not, I say. Yeah, why not, I say. Here's a nice little halfling. Could be straight from a good number of other games. And then the last one, I think, is the Wolfkin. That's on Bloodjol. So that gives you a little bit of a feel. The whole thing is 44 pages. Yeah, the whole PDF that you can get. And just for the art, it's worth having a look at it and feel for it. There are various levels, of course. This next stretch goals, the first ones were blown through in minutes. The next ones, I think, include Roll20 and Foundry implementation. That's pretty cool. If you know, I'm very keen on Foundry, so that's good. But I think actually the rules are such, certainly at the beginning here, I want to run this as a quick start soon. I can easily use Roll or Alchemy or something to just use to roll against it. I don't need a big implementation for this. But I had some fun. Maybe if you're interested, I can briefly show you the map I made for this. I had some fun just mapping out the adventure site, which I stuck into my Forbidden Lands test environment. Yeah, this might mild spoilers, of course, because it's a map. So, there it is. So I just created this in Dungeon Alchemist. Yeah, and with all the lights on, you can switch them off, of course, if you want. It's great. Dungeon Alchemist is a really good tool, especially the Foundry export and import. Makes it a lot easier. A lot quicker to get your maps in and out. So if you want the maps lit, you can start them dark, and when your players come through, they can light all the torches. And that's great. Have I got a player here? Not sure vision is correctly done. No, it doesn't have a light source on him. Anyway, that probably goes beyond what the system actually is. So if you are interested, if you have any questions, please do ask in the comments. Yeah, give me some feedback if you think this is of interest to you, if you would want to play in this, if I've actually managed to get a game together on this in the next few weeks. And do let me know. So now I've got some light. Right. For now, however, I bid you farewell. Check it out. I think it's a cool looking game, and for free quick start, you can't really complain about that at all, can you? So, farewell until next time.